Okay.
No, I was George Burt, who's a musician or composer, who teaches at Rice and is composing music for a couple of films of mine. One of them being "Fool for Love," and they just requested that I appear at this event. And I do quite.
Don't make speeches. I'll answer questions.
And you'll also be sitting in the Narrative Strategies in Feature Film Seminar?
I don't believe so.
Okay, he's in the analyst for scoring for film.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as I understand it, they're showing the film, and all I'm really going to do is just do a Q&A. And I don't prepare for these things. I'm sorry I don't have more information. I got a call from a colleague of yours, from the Houston Post, who, and it was a pretty rank interview because he...
Well, they told me that over at Swamp. They said that some guy had called you up, and he just didn't know what he was, the questions...
He didn't know who they were, and he didn't know who I was, and he said, what is this, some liberal... blah blah blah. And anyway, and so I just want to tell you right off the bat that I agreed to this because of George Burt.
Okay.
And I've agreed to come down and.
Well, I want to let you know. I know who you are, and the only reason I can think that I guess it was Tim Carmen at the Houston Post.
Yes.
The only reason I can think that he's just so not well versed on your career is that he does that for a living, and I myself am a freelance journalist. No,
I'm not comparing to, but what I'm saying is I'm really not prepared. This is not an event that I know anything about.
Okay.
And I don't want to diminish what it is. But to me, I'm going to the University of Virginia where they're having a film festival, and I'm doing the same thing there on Saturday. And this came up, and I said, well, fine. It's very easy for me to stop by, and I've had some history in Houston, and George Burt I like very much. And it was really at his request I'm doing this. So I think they're going to show "Fool for Love," and but I don't know what else, really, what the purpose of the whole thing is.
When was the last time you were in Houston, when you were shooting Brewster McCloud?
Oh, I've been there since then, but I haven't lived there since then.
Mm-hmm.
But Brewster was, we were there quite some time during that. That was, 71?
It's really interesting to see films that were shot in Houston 10 years ago, and then to look at the skyline and see how much has changed. It's like they put a new building up every year.
I'm sure it has.
On the film that you're working on this year for HBO, Tanner 88.
Yeah.
That's really one of my favorite shows. I'm not a regular television viewer, but I really fell in love with that show, and I think it's real interesting. Do they plan to run that again?
No, they canceled it. We were supposed to go till November, and they dropped us right after the Atlanta convention. It was the last shows that we shot, and so they're all finished. I just came back from Europe 2 days ago. We won the grand prize at Cannes for the television, world television kind of cable festival they had over there. And I went over there because I wasn't sure how they would receive the Tanners being so uniquely geared to the American,
It's a very well thought out script, and a lot of it reminds me, for instance, of Nashville, and that there's so many characters, and they all seem to come together at one point.
It's very reminiscent of that. Well, Gary Trudeau was the writer on this, and he was my partner, and he did just a sensational job. I think it's the best work I've ever done.
Was the last episode aired the one with Harry Andrews, where he's
Harry Anderson? There was one episode after that, and there was the last episode with the one he was in the trailer. Is that the one you saw?
Yes.
Then there was one more after that, which the opening showed Harry Anderson leaving the convention floor after the convention.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the question of whether Tanner would run as an independent, and then we left that an open-end thing, and that was the last one that was shot or done because HBO decided not to go ahead with it. Too bad, because it wouldn't it have been great now with these two bumblers.
I think this is something that people will look back in years to come, and it's such a true indication of how things were going. You covered up in winter up in New England, and the guy's freezing, and then he's in California, and you shot it to where he was in a debate with Jackson and Dukakis.
Yeah, we were really pleased with it.
Did you was a lot of that written as you were going along?
Well, all of it was written. I'd say about 2/3 of the shows were scripted. I mean, each show was about 2/3 was scripted, and about 1/3 was what we call found art. I mean, we just improvised, on the spot. But it was Gary was writing, and we were getting it on a fax machine, and we were on the air 8 to 10 days later. So we tried to keep it very current.
There's certainly a lot of actors in that. Was your budget on that similar to a feature film?
Well, no, it's a television budget, but these people all worked. Harry Anderson, for instance, just called up and says, "I want to be in it. I love what you're doing. I want to be in it." Most of those people just, are working for very, very little money.
Right, like Jeff Daniels is in a bit for 1 minute.
Absolutely, yeah, same way. And because the people admired it and knew what we were doing and understood it, so we had a feast with the actors.
Would you mind if I ask you some questions about some of your previous movies?
Not at all.
Okay. Something I just caught on TV the other day, and a film I've seen several times, The Long Goodbye. That's, to me, it's one of Elliot Gould's best films, and it's one of the best depictions of the whole detective character.
Yeah. That's not on cassette yet. You saw it on television, did you?
Right.
I'm surprised. What's happened with that film? I love that film.
Another film, now, here's one that I haven't seen that I went and looked through a discography to see what was available, because I met a lady that was in this film, The Perfect Couple.
Perfect Couple, yeah.
A Perfect Couple.
Yeah, that's not out on cassette yet for some reason.
Any chance that that'll be out soon? It seems like really obscure. I couldn't get a hold of it.
It's a terrific film, and it failed. I mean, Fox, they dropped it right away. I mean, it hardly got released. It came on the tail of a film called Quintet that failed.
Right.
And they just pulled it out of circulation almost immediately. It was almost unreleased. It was a musical.
One of the ladies in it, Tommy Lee Bradley, performs a bit around Houston.
Yeah, is she down there now?
Yes.
Well, she was in it. She was terrific. She was one of our main people. Crazy.
During that period in the 70s, I guess a lot of those films just weren't really doing well. Like, A Wedding and Health also were in that period.
Well, A Wedding did very well, as a matter of fact. Health didn't. Health didn't really get released, and nor did A Perfect Couple. I mean, that was sort of They were not generally. But A Wedding did quite well.
Then it seems after that, okay, then you did Popeye, and then you went into a series of films, Come Back to the Five and Dime, Streamers, where you were doing adaptions of plays.
Yeah.
Was this just sort of a reaction to to what had happened to your other major films before that?
Well, whatever happened to those films has happened in the marketplace. I mean, they have no effect on me. I don't consider those failed films. I consider them highly successful films.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't marketed. They didn't work in the marketplace. They weren't marketed properly, or the audiences just didn't perceive them that way. Tell her I'll just call her. Find out where she is before I'll call her right back. And and I got into I started doing those plays just because